Hey again guys, it's Joe from Finding Faith back with Richard, and we're going to keep talking about frat culture. So in the last video we left off, I was basically asking him, do you think Christians can be a part of frat culture? He kind of got into the answer for this next question a little bit. We're really just jumping in with this one. So my next question then is, how do you think Christians should approach frat life? What do you think that should look like?
Yeah, so approaching frat life, you mean as in approaching students who are in fraternity?
Yeah, potentially, or just the culture overall, or what do you think that practically Christians should do about this issue? Because it is an issue,
Right.
See things happening at frat parties. People will occasionally die at frat parties. There's sexual assault issues.
Very true.
And, just other problems. People get into accidents or issues with the police.
Right.
And it's really unfortunate.
With that, it's crazy. When you look at the statistics of it, just what goes on the row is so crazy high compared to like the normal college party that it's almost like an injustice. I feel like sometimes if we're on the outside looking in, thinking like, well, hey, I'll just walk past and not do anything.
Okay.
In one regard, I don't believe that you should just go in there and go and just start ridiculing people.
Yeah, shaming doesn't work,
right,
in my experience.
I do think, it starts with one, kind of in that reach one, teach one mentality.
Okay.
I think it starts with just praying too. Just as a Christian, we want to depend on God. We want to really just lift up people that we know that are in fraternities or sororities, and we really want to just begin to pray for them, ask God for them to just come to the end of their rope, to understand that these things, the status that they have, the girls that they are, meeting up with, and other stuff, the drinking, all that will not satisfy them. And at the end of the day, there's a void in their heart that they can't fill based off their own accomplishments or approval that they get from the guys in the row or whatever. Basically,
you can't fill a hole. If you think of it, because when we think of the holes in ourselves, we all kind of have holes in ourselves, we think of them as holes that have a bottom, right? So if we put enough stuff in it, we're going to fill it. But there's no bottom, so we're just putting all this stuff in it and it's just going through the other end, basically.
No, that's exactly right. Yeah, just praying that would happen for these guys, because there's not a lot of time for them to, understand like, hey, I need to change my ways, or otherwise this is the result of it. Whatever you whatever you reap, you sow. So it's kind of like this mentality where you have to really go in it to be like, I think as Christians we need to have a perspective on, these are people that are lost. These are people that have lost their way.
Yeah.
One a good friend of mine once, he asked me, okay, what are the benefits of being a Christian, having a relationship with God, right?
Okay.
And just, off the top of your head, you can think of, okay, we have eternal salvation, we have identity, security, we have hope, we have a love that comes from above, that is unconditional, that is patient.
On top of all that, we also have this amazing community of believers, people who are willing to be there for you in so many situations. You've been there for me in situations. Thank you again.
You know what? I'm just doing what Jesus did for all of us. He really spent time with us and loved us unconditionally.
Yeah.
We have this concept of grace, forgiveness. The list goes on. And every day, when we are reaching out to people that are across campus, there are people who wake up, they have none of that because they don't know Jesus. And when I think of the fraternity culture, what are they doing to fill in, to get their hope, to get their grace, forgiveness, their identity? What are they doing to earn approval from others that we don't have to worry about because we're Christians? I mean, we still have to fight temptations, but we understand, like, okay, there's a much greater purpose, because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how many friends you have, how many girls you've been with, how much money you make. We know there's a greater purpose in that. Jesus has called us to be higher. So with that, as we're approaching this culture, I think, one, we need to begin to pray for them. And it starts with that one person that you know. Maybe that one person in your class, sit next to you wearing letters saying, hey, what are you going to do for a weekend? I once had a friend, I was in class with him, and I was just like, hey, we were talking about Halloween, right? Like, hey, what are you going to do for Halloween? And I was like, oh yeah, I'm going to, he asked me, what are you doing? I was like, oh yeah, I'm going to a party at my house, and you're invited if you want. And when I asked him, it's like, what are you doing? He's like, oh, I'm going to drop acid and go party at my house, Greek house. And it was extremely sad. This is also an opportunity to meet him where he's at, to help to help pray for him, and also just be like, oh, well, have you always been doing that? And like, why do you do that? Is there a reason? I just do it because everyone else does it. And honestly, I don't like doing it, but I just do it because I want to fit in, I want to feel accepted. And that's when you're like, oh, dude, I've been there too. And that was before I, actually started getting curious about what is purpose in life. And then you can start to share your testimony, share the good news, the gospel. Yeah, so I think that should be our approach, just to really love them, give them a vision for something different, and hopefully, if we're really walking with God and we're having fruit, they'll begin to see, something different about our lives that's not in theirs. Like, why do we have this peace? Why do we have this sense of fulfillment?
Yeah.
And we don't necessarily have all the success that the world deems as successful.
Yeah, and I think that was an extremely strong answer. I really like that. I'm definitely going to try and apply some of that more often in my life, even though I don't personally know anyone who's in a frat right now. But with that being said, I think that was just, there's a lot to really work with there. I think you actually answered the next question that I had about how you would suggest redirecting it, and a lot of it seems to be living by example and just reaching out to people individually as opposed to in a group. Because you go to a group and talk to people and you get all kinds of reactions. But you talk to someone who you know more personally, you're more likely to get someone to be more realistic and kind of humanize you a little bit, right? Because if your first impression on someone is trying to be Mr. Spiritual, it's gotta go over weird.
Very weird or very bad, or maybe both.
Yeah. So this is more of a personal question for you. This is the last question, I think. So right now, we were talking about in the first part, basically, all the reports that were coming out against Harvey Weinstein, Kevin Spacey. There are other reports against people who are more minor, so to speak. There's still a lot of issues of sexual assault and harassment. With all that in mind, that kind of comes from a place of dehumanization, basically, which ties in a little bit with some of the stuff that we're seeing in frat culture in these parties, because everyone has these objectives of trying to, like you said, get women and everything, and then it's easy from there to not fully see them as human. Even if you acknowledge that they're human, you're not really necessarily always acting like it in that culture. Right. So how do you personally humanize women that you come across? How does that process work for you?
Well, they are human. They're actually, equal to men. One thing, it's funny, a lot of people, they always talk about the difference between women and men. And I think even equality is a huge thing nowadays, especially. Even back then. So I think first just recognizing biblically, okay, what does it mean to be a woman and a man? We gotta understand that God did make us differently, both physically, emotionally, spiritually, intellectually sometimes.
Yeah.
But, because, I think women are smarter. But we have to understand too that we are actually equal, before God. They are also heirs of the throne.
Wait, did you say heirs to the throne?
Heirs to the throne.
Okay. Heirs. Okay, thank you for clearing that up.
Hairs, that'd be funny, but they did, have longer hair.
Yeah, generally speaking.
Anyway, we are different, but for the most part, we're both children of God. So I think, in the way you treat women should be the same way that you would treat your sister or your mother. And that's assuming that you come from a home where they were treated appropriately.
Yeah.
If you don't know how to treat them, I definitely suggest you just really read the scriptures for yourself. Especially maybe 1 Corinthians 13.
Good reference.
Talks about love.
Yeah.
And also just understanding that because they're equal and because we're to treat them like our sisters, holy and beloved, and the way we see them should be of the highest respect and regard. What that means is, the way you talk to them should be a way that, you would talk to your mom or sister. Don't say anything that would be, just extremely rude or disrespectful.
Yeah.
Learn how to compliment in a way that isn't creepy. I think with...
What's an example of a creepy compliment?
A creepy compliment would be something like, complimenting them on their features that usually shouldn't be complimented unless you're like a husband.
Yeah.
Another too would just be out of the blue, out of context, out of nowhere. I think that's where you see some sexual harassment come up. Not to kind of minimize the severity of sexual harassment, but there are times when guys could just be like, oh, hey, you look nice, and then the girl will just be like, oh, you sexually harassed me. But there are also times when it's extremely serious, and a girl will not say anything just because out of fear of like, oh well, he's my boss, and I think that's where the problem comes in.
Do you think it helps to establish a relationship before you make a compliment like that?
You know, it would definitely help. There's actually a statistic where even with like the whole sexual assault and harassment, is most of that comes from people that, like the victim, that's from someone they know. It's like 70 it's like a huge percentage of people that they know. Maybe it's
that's right. I always forget that. It's always
it's not just some random schmuck just coming out of nowhere catcalling. It's someone that's like a coworker or something, which is the scary part. The part is, I think, where we need to really focus on is understanding, okay, you know what, this is wrong, and we can correct this, but there's a way to correct this. You can't just go any other way and just... Social justice needs to be fought for. I think that's something that, as Christians, you know, we definitely want to fight for, just for being, you know, Christian. Sometimes in the absence of what we say or what we do is also a loud kind of voice and just to how people view us. For instance, like, you know, there's a lot of cases going out with police brutality.
Oh yeah.
And if Christians aren't there to be like, hey, you know, that was wrong, but there's healing that, you know, I think Jesus, you know, it's not his fault. This is a result of man. But that doesn't mean that God doesn't love that police officer just as much as he loves you. Or that person that, you know, the unfortunate person that got killed. So in that same way, we need to understand that God loves everyone. And it's not just a blanket statement. It's a statement saying that everyone is created equally. Everyone has a purpose that God has called them to do. With treating women, and even in the workplace, at school, you respect them as a friend, as a person. Now, obviously, the gray area is complimenting and, you know, just being very cautious with establishing boundaries. There's also friendship boundaries too.
I think it's also good to point out you're pretty much done with that. That was a solid 12 ounces that you chugged in a short amount of time.
10. Yeah, I could do 12.
Oh, wow. So I also want to point out that this stuff doesn't come overnight. This takes practice and it's hard work, but it's absolutely worth it to the people in your life and to you because it affects you even if you don't necessarily realize that this stuff is affecting you. Alright, I think you answered these questions really well, and I even asked a couple of additional ones in there just because, you know, you brought them up and got my mind thinking. That's always a good thing.
I encourage you guys, whoever's watching this video, you know, just to really, you know, if you're still investigating like who God is or even faith and, you know, how Christians are different in social issues, I encourage you to really, you know, ask questions and seek, you know, just what it, from other Christians, like what it means to be a Christ follower.
Don't assume you know what it means. It's very easy to assume that we know much more than we actually know.
And everything I said to you, honestly, if it's not like biblical or if it's not, you know, with the right intention, if love isn't the core foundation of everything we're saying, then it's nothing, you know. And that's ultimately, I believe, you know, as every Christian is called to, it's just to really extend that love.
Richard, my goodness, thank you so much for your time and
thanks for having me,
man.
Yeah, don't forget to please like, comment, subscribe to this guy's channel.
Thank you so much. Alright, thanks guys for watching. Have a blessed day or a blessed night.